everybody. My name is Rich Cosgrove. I am the Government Affairs Director with Stark Trumbull Area Realtors, and we are here today with our auditor of Stark County, Angela Kinsey, and we are also here with John Oats. John's going to introduce his position, and we're going to let them tell us a little bit about what's going on with property tax abolishment or the possibility thereof. So, Angela, if you want to introduce yourself, welcome, and John, introduce yourself and say welcome to everybody.
Thank you. I'm Angela Kinsey. I am your Stark County Auditor. I was appointed in January of 2025. I have been in the office as the administrator for almost 15 years. So I'm enjoying my role as the auditor and look forward to having this discussion today.
And very supportive of the Realtor organization. We appreciate
Very
you.
supportive, yes.
And I'm John Oats. I'm Director of Budgets and Settlements with the Stark County Auditors Office. I've been there almost 19 years now. I'm pretty much responsible for all the property tax distributions that come into the office and sending them out to the respective recipients.
So we definitely have the right people in the room to answer these questions, and you guys have seen some of the questions beforehand. But again, just be comfortable, relax. We're just going to throw anything out there that you feel is important to share, and we'll get started and just say, so there's been a lot of talk lately about abolishing property taxes. We've heard in Ohio and possibly even other states. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there. Why the conversation, and why now?
So people are upset. I mean, I think that's one main trigger. There was all these reevaluations that happened throughout Ohio. There was different portions of Ohio went at different times. We're all on a different schedule. All 88 counties are on a different schedule. Ours was in 2024. So with the rising cost of houses, also brings up market value. And as an arm of the law, as the auditor is, it is by law that the state requires us to do a full reappraisal every 6 years and then an update every 3. So 2024 was the reappraisal year, and that equated to higher market values. And the taxes are based on market value along with other levies that pass and things of that nature.
Okay. All right. So what role do you play as the actual auditor? You've explained that every 6 years you have to come up with a value of the properties. What is your role as the auditor besides coming up with those values? What else do you do as far as a county auditor? What are your roles?
Besides appraising property, we are going to transfer every property. If there's a deed, anybody buying a house, you want to add a survivorship deed or a transfer on death deed. We do all those transfers. Any new building developments, all those plat maps that are gone through the engineer's office, building department, commissioner's office for approval, those also come to me for approval as well. Fiscal, we have a fiscal office that pays every bill in the whole county, so we're always looking at the money that's going out. Payroll, we pay every employee in the county, as long as also, Board of Elections poll workers, we also pay them as well. So we're constantly monitoring all those funds that are being expended every day. Weights and measures, you're going to see those 2026 seals popping up on the gas
see your name all over.
And the scales at the grocery store. So we're certifying that you're getting exactly what you're paying for.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Dog license. I want to do one
that's
plug
right.
dog license.
Yes.
We got to do those. So January 31st was the cutoff for dog license. But if you do adopt a new pet or you get a new pet, obviously you're not paying the late fee. So we handle making sure our little friendly furry friends are safe.
And we want to make sure we share. What is that? Bob Barker was always get your pet spayed or neutered, right?
Yes.
For those of us that are that age, right?
Are that old.
When it comes specifically to the property tax, our role, basically what I tell people is the treasurer is responsible for collecting your property taxes. We are responsible for the information that's on your property taxes. We're responsible for your value. We're responsible for making sure the right levies are charged to your property. Any special assessments you may have are charged to your property and in the right amounts and distributed. So our role is kind of the information on your tax bill is handled by the auditor's office, and the treasurer is responsible for actually billing you and collecting your taxes.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Sean. All right. So let's just say that property taxes are abolished. What do you imagine? How would the county get their revenue? How would townships pay for their services? What do you envision happening?
Well, it has to shift to another bucket. So If you're not collecting from one source, you have to collect from another. So keep in mind that public utilities pay a third of the entire state's property taxes.
I think that's key because a lot of us don't understand about these, was it gas lines, oil lines, things like that. So I guess if you can dive into that a little bit.
What, a third is public utility. So, yeah, but before we get to there, I just wanted to make a point about there's really only 3 types of taxes that can generate the kind of money we're talking about to run our schools, our townships, all our services. We all like our police and fire departments. We all like our schools. We like our parks. We like our libraries. But there's only 3 realistic methods to collect that kind of money, and that's property tax, sales tax, and income tax. And Ohio has really strived, and they finally got down to the 2.75% flat tax for everybody. They've been working toward that for a decade, and they just got there. I don't see a strong appetite for really increasing that income tax back to compensate for property tax. So that kind of leaves
So no matter what tax bracket you're in, it's 2.75.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Right.
So to me that all signs point in the direction of increasing sales tax to compensate for this if it were to happen.
We'll talk about that a little bit. I mean, sales tax right now in Stark County, we're pretty low.
We're the lowest
relatively.
in the state.
Yep.
6.5% right now.
6.5%, the lowest in the state.
So
Of which the state gets 5.75%. The county has a 0.5% that is designated to criminal justice, so it can be shared by, the bulk of it's the sheriff, and the prosecutor then can get some, and the treasurer even for their DTAC forfeiture cases. But and then there's an additional 0.25% for SARTA, so that in total is 6.5%. But only 0.5% of that stays, funds your county government.
Okay.
But last year we collected in Stark County about $660 million in property tax, like I said, to fund everything that I just talked about. It would take about an additional 9.5% sales tax to make up for that $660 million. So if it were all done by sales tax, our overall sales tax would increase to something around 16%.
Which is quite significant, especially when you're talking about buying a car or a big purchase. Right now at 6.5%, we're pretty lucky compared to what that would be.
Right. Yeah. And I wouldn't really want to own a business around here when people could drive to Pennsylvania and pay 0. Right now, they'll eat that 6.5%.
Well, I think that's important. A lot of people don't realize that we don't pay sales tax on food here in the state of Ohio. I believe they do in Pennsylvania, but they don't have tax on clothing. And I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's my understanding. So I think about that when you, Angie, say about the buckets, right? And then, John, you're saying there's really only 3 ways to get this additional funds. So if we look at it collectively, the state's going to have to come up with different ways to tax folks. And so not just the sales tax, but there could be tax on use or services. I know that we as the Realtor organization have fought this for a long time, that the state has proposed things to tax services. So if you get a home inspection done, that would be taxed on your services. You have an HVAC person come to your house and, work on your furnace, that could be taxed. So we fought that for a long time, but there would be other ways that people that are complaining about property taxes, we would all just be contributing in different ways, is really what it would come down to. They're going to find a way to collect the money that we need to run the county and the state.
So that's what, with who contributes to the property taxes, when we talk about public utilities paying the third, and corporations and agriculture paying 10%, and then the homeowners are paying the 60%. Abolishing and going to a sales tax is not going to favor those most vulnerable. They're going to pay that every day, and we're going to pay the full 100%.
Well, and going back to what you're saying about the utility companies and things like that, that's property tax. So that's just property that's sitting there that are, they're paying tax on. That's not a human using anything. So really, when you're saying 16%, we could be looking at 18 or 20% sales tax to really make that up, because it's a use tax. It's not a property tax anymore. It's how much we're contributing. And I think that kind of segues into your budgets, right? You kind of know what's coming.
You got to know what's coming. And the schools especially, they do have to do their 3-year to 5-year forecasts, and they have bond ratings that are attached to those. So that's, the bond payments come out of those property tax disbursements, so they have to maintain those bond ratings for.
So budgeting could really look different
It
from
looks
each
a lot
year.
different.
We might have a sales tax at 16% the first year that could go up to 20. And as we know about taxes, usually when they go up, they don't come back down. So we imagine that, from year to year or every few years, if we're on a 3-year cycle or something like that for budgeting for schools, they would have to know what that tax rate is, right?
Right.
That's
Right.
very problematic.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about, we talked about the predictability. How would school funding be reduced? I mean, are we looking at an immediate impact if our property taxes are abolished as of January 1, 2027? How does that work? Because we are 1 year in the rears on our property taxes. What does that look like if that were to happen? Any ideas?
So if it,
So
go ahead.
it would really be up to the legislature to decide how they want to fund
How
it.
they want to do it.
Okay.
But
When
but
it
we would
starts,
certainly
because-
lose our local control over how many dollars our local school district gets. It would all just go into one big bucket, and then the state would disperse it as they see fit. That's kind of scary, I think, for a lot of people.
Especially with levies that have passed too. That's the voters' control. That's the voters' control of what they want to spend their money on based on their property value, right? So they know the millage that they're voting for, and they've passed a lot of these levies, which is compiled into the property taxes. But you lose that control of voting for
For the things you
for
want.
the things that you want and the services that you want to pay for. If you want to pay for that fire department levy, you want to, buy that $1.5 million fire truck. I live in Sandy Creek. We have shared services already. We can't afford a new fire truck.
Yep.
We rely solely on property taxes with shared services.
Well, it's interesting because you bring that up, and I'll say, I've had, as tax bills have gone out, they're due, the 25th of this month, a lot of people have said, how is it that the governor just signed for some, 4 different tax bills that are supposed to help homeowners or help reduce with property tax or whatever, but our taxes have gone up? And I think a lot of people, to your point that you just said, you have those services. So we have library, we have our fire and police, we have our
Roads.
schools, roads. I mean, all of those things. So we did just vote for, I think, library increase. I don't know if MDD.
MRDD and children's services. So those levies went on for this tax bill.
this tax bill.
So that is why it's higher than it was last year. House Bill 186. That was, now, granted, none of these bills are even a bill yet or a law yet because it hasn't been the 90 days since the governor signed off, which isn't until March 20th. That's why 186 isn't effective till second half, but the remainder of the bills aren't effective until next year.
So that's when we would potentially see.
That's when you're going to start seeing, and it's a gradual.
But I think an important distinction to make is these bills did not do anything to take us back to what we paid in prior
2022,
years. It didn't do
23.
anything to lower your property taxes. What they do is they put guardrails on the increases going forward. So we won't see things like, the record increases that we saw last year when, we had, reappraised values of 30% or higher. That would slow down the growth that the schools, in the revenue the schools receive.
Yeah, because if we think about that, 2019 was the last time, or 2020 is 2018. My goodness. Okay, so we look at what happened in real estate sales from 2020 forward. That's why we've seen such a huge increase. And you're saying that with the tax levies that have been passed and things like that, we're not going to see that again in the future. The huge jump that we've seen of the last 6 years, the legislators have made that so we won't see that again. That's the idea.
Well, what they've done is the House Bill 186 is the biggest one, and it applies all to school districts. So we had the perfect storm in 2024, and we had reappraisal of 30-some%, highest we've had in maybe ever.
Ever.
But also with that, after the 18 reappraisal, 13 of our 17 school districts reached what they call the 20 mil floor. Now, I'll try and give you I could talk about the 20 mil floor for an hour. But the bottom line is basically, as most of any levy that you pass, say pass a levy for parks, as values are increased due to reappraisal, the effective rate of taxation that we actually pay is lowered so that in this case, the parks would receive the same amount of money, basically.
So you can't get more money.
Because of reappraisal. Because raise the values, lower the rates, same amount of money. The schools, however, are guaranteed 20 mils of operating money. So after the 18 reappraisal, most of our schools got down to that 20 mils. So now we can't reduce those 20 mils any further. So property values increase by 30%, you're paying 30% more on these 20 mils because we can't reduce them to compensate for that. House Bill 186, what it does is it lowers that increase by, instead of paying 30% more on those 20 mils because your house increased by 30%, you're going to pay the rate of inflation on those 20 mils. So probably somewhere, around 3% a year, you're going to pay something around 9% on that instead of the 30%. So it really slows down the additional revenue that they're going to get in the future, but it doesn't address it. It doesn't take away money from the entities.
So where we're at already is where we're at. It's just not going to take away. Okay. Yeah. We talk a lot about the schools because if we look at our tax bills, that is the big chunk that we see for our school systems. I get this question all the time, and I honestly don't know the answer to it, and I don't know that I was even thought of or born when the lottery came out or who did that or whatever, but we hear all the time that, the lottery was designed to help pay for our schools or pay for this or the alcohol consumption tax or whatever it is, that pay for these things. Any thoughts on that? Does the lottery money actually go to the schools to support that?
100%.
Okay.
But it's just a piece of their school funding from the state.
Okay.
So the state contributes about $13 billion a year to the schools. The lottery tax only generates about $1.5 billion. So the lottery was never going to fund our schools entirely, but it is a piece of it.
Okay.
But it's not necessarily that, when the lottery started, they took the existing amount of money they were supporting schools with and just stacked that on top of it. The legislature still determines the total level of funding, that the schools get, but it just has to be above the $1.5 billion they get from the lottery.
A lot of things are going into this, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of money coming in that we may not be aware of, aside from just property taxes, as you guys are explaining.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with this, again, we talked a little bit about maybe tax on use, sales tax, anything like that. Is there anything else that you can think of that any unintended consequences that we maybe haven't thought of or the legislators haven't thought of if we are able to abolish property taxes? Any thoughts on any kind of unintended consequences, rather?
Well, I think the biggest worry would be, if you look at the way schools are built, they're all built for the most part with a bond issue passed by the residents
and that's to build the school. You're saying.
Right. Okay. But those are then all bonded against future property tax collections because these levies go on a lot of times 30 years. So Perry, North Canton, Canton City Schools, they've all passed bond issues lately for new schools. Plain Local has one on the ballot this May. So what happens with that? Who pays for that?
So basically what you're saying is by abolishing property taxes now, we've already committed to pay, let's hypothetically say, 20 more years to get this bond paid for the school building. So technically, that money would be shut off, and that's the end of their payments coming in to help build that school. So they're halfway through paying for a school, and now they're out of money.
Right.
So that's a huge consequence because what would they do? I assume they've got to pay their bills just like everybody else. So where do they get that money from?
Right. Well, that's the thing too. Is we fund the local fire departments, for example. With insurance and insuring your home, there's an ISO rating for available fire department to put out a fire.
How close is the fire hydrant? How close is the firehouse?
Right, you have that, but it's also 50% is staffing and equipment. Do you have the appropriate communication? Do you have dispatchers? Like I said, I do live in Sandy Creek Fire District, and it's already shared services. If that goes away, I don't know where we get our services from. So I think you're leaving a lot of risk on the table by doing that with not having an answer to how you get those services.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point because we may not want to pay property taxes, but when our house catches on fire or burglars at that front door, we want our police and firemen, right? Mm-hmm. Fire people. So yeah, we definitely. All right. So my last question for you, and feel free to, as I said, share whatever. But the last question I have is, so as we will be voting, this is a big election year, as we'll be voting in November, if this were to make it to the ballot and we get to vote on this, what should voters be paying attention to right now and in the future before we get to the November election if this is there?
My opinion is that every voter should pay attention to what is on their tax bill. What exactly are you paying for, and what are you willing to do without? This ballot initiative is not an a la carte type of ballot issue. Like, it is going to abolish everything. You don't get to say, well, I don't have kids in the school, so I don't want to pay for the schools, but I do want to pay for my local services for fire and police and roads. That's not how this is going to work. This is all or nothing.
Wow.
So while everybody has their different, opinions of what they'd like to pay for, it's nothing. You will pay none of it.
And who would set the rates, let's just say for the sales tax? Is that going to be you as the auditor? Is that going to be the state? Who would set that? Because there's a lot of unknowns, right? If they abolish property tax, we don't know what we're going to end up paying or how. So if it were a sales tax...
Currently, the sales tax, you can only increase it by 3%. So the state would have to change that law that we can increase it more than 3%.
One other thing, I guess, as I think about this, and I said one last question, but I'm going to add another, is when you look at your tax bill, there are rollbacks on there and there are discounts. Somebody is paying those discounts. So tell us, who is paying that and how is that being made up?
So the state pays for those rollbacks.
So they are getting funding from taxpayers. How do they get their funding?
So rollbacks started as a trade-off for increasing the sales tax 30, 40 years ago.
For the state?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was part of we're going to increase the sales tax, but we're also going to pick up basically 12.5% of your property taxes. Now, since then, the state has really reneged on their promise. Any levy passed after 2013 are now not eligible to receive these rollbacks. So what used to be a straight 10% for all non-business property, the state paid 10% of that and 2.5% of your taxes for your owner-occupied home. So you basically used to get, a 12.5% discount on your home. Now the state has basically stopped doing that for new levies. So what used to be a 10% discount is now probably more like a 7% discount for non-business and, maybe 1.5% for owner-occupied.
Well, I think I noticed on my property tax, unless I just happened to look at it for the first time and really paid attention, is I'm pretty confident, at least on your website, it did say a 10% rollback, or on my bill it did. This time it didn't say 10% rollback. It just said rollback. And I didn't equate that to 10% or not. So I don't know if there was a change there. But I do know with moving forward with what the governor signed, we will start to see that rollback being reduced, and we will start to see homeowners that will increase. Is that correct? The what the state is paying?
So it's not necessarily.
Okay.
No, it's...
The rollback is slowly going to be rolled back away, correct?
Yes, especially if they do have a bill in the House now that would eliminate all continuous levies after tax year 29, I believe. And almost all of our school levies are continuous levies. So the state would not be, if these were replaced with new levies, the state would not be picking up the rollbacks on those any longer.
Interesting. Very scary. Very scary stuff. Thanks so much for being here with us, guys. It's
Of course.
Great information. I don't know if you have anything else to share.
I always recommend calling our office if you have any questions. John and I are always available to talk. My staff is extremely helpful, and we're always answering the phones. It's a really busy time right now, but we're still pushing through calls and happy to answer any questions that you might have. And if there is levies that are on the ballot and you want to have questions about that and how much it's really going to cost you, we're happy to calculate all that for you too. So.
Well, I definitely know that we will be reaching out to your office because you're a huge supporter for the Realtor organization and your constituents. We appreciate you. John, you've been to our events and spoken at them. You guys are both very knowledgeable, lots of years of experience. So we will definitely be reaching out to you. And I can't thank you enough both for your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks
so
for
much for having us. And Rich Cosgrove here with Stark Trumbull Area Realtors. Hopefully you found this session exciting as we did, or at least informational if nonetheless. And thanks so much for tuning in today.